Good evening from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 8:40 p.m. Brisbane, Australia time. Tanya Aaron's coming to you from her living room couch with her trusty hound beside her. Yes, the paparazzi are filming. The paparazzi are filming, Beauregard. I know you look completely nonplussed. So I've decided to make this video this evening. I had a kind of a breakthrough in my therapy with my psychiatrist today, and it was quite powerful. I was explaining to him that I'd had this kind of early, I call it a kind of a flowering of my libido that happens usually in springtime once a year. Sometimes, 2 or 3 times a year, there might be a little bit of a vague kind of, in the meridians and the chakras. And I always push it down because after decades of trauma and disappointments in love, I don't act on those primal Kundalini uprisings anymore. And it's a great shame. I actually always hope to find, my one true love, and it was all very idealistic and sweet and Pollyanna and sometimes a bit naive actually, given the kind of monstrosities that I drew to me. But that's in the past. So I had my debrief with my doctor, and he pointed out that I'm not 25 anymore and I'm not likely to continuously make mistakes because I will have evolved by now after years of therapy. One can only hope. So I explained to him that I had been very unwell, and even in recent days, with upsets with my bladder. And I said, so then I was quite surprised that, today's Wednesday. So Saturday I had this supercharging in my sacral chakra, and this feeling of as I jokingly call it, the call of the wild, right? I'm way beyond the call of the wild. I'm an older woman now, and my children are grown, and I haven't become a grandmother, and but I'm past that libidinous, lustful phase of youth when you're completely active, usually in my case, with my first husband and only husband, having a regular sex life that was, let me just put it delicately, dull. But in your first flowering of youth, when you're completely innocent and you hadn't explored all your sexuality or your potentials, you're quite satisfied with the dull roll on, roll off, 2-minute wonder, 30-second wonder. And it's probably why, after decades, we're still wondering about that. But anyway, I made up for that in my 40s and early, very early, in my 40s up until I turned 50. And then I shut down my sexuality completely because of, just disappointments in men who played games and were actually vacuous and cruel. So this sudden flowering in my Kundalini spirit had me a bit concerned. So I said to my doctor, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I've been very ill. So I said, sex and death. I said, what does one do when one fears one's own mortality? The sexuality heightens and increases, which is why people were so freaking libidinous during World War II, right? Because at any moment a bomb could be lobbed at you. So everyone was frantically jostling and jockeying into position every chance they could, because it was literally, the fear of complete annihilation and death. So I said to my doctor, I said, well, I've been feeling a bit more at ease and a bit better. I feel like the boot's been taken off the back of my neck with the COVID regime. I said, it's not completely over, and they're trotting out new ways to terrorise us with AI threats and Ukrainian revolutions, and it just never ends, doesn't it? It's just bollocks. But anyway, I said, he said to me, it's quite interesting, he said to me, you're not my only patient that is suddenly feeling this kind of release and blossoming out and feeling, ready to re-engage with life again and be fully engaged and, just release and relief. And I said to him, yes, well, it feels like they've finally taken the boot off our neck. I said, perhaps only temporarily, but I said it is a kind of a relief and a release. And it is nice to feel these little surging little urges that I suppress for reasons of safety, But it's nice to feel like a complete and full and redolent human again. Oh my goodness, I'm just suddenly having a hot flush. Suddenly it got really hot in here and I haven't got the heater on, so it's me, it's my spirit. So on the subject of that, so my doctor said to me, Tanya, he said, the problem with you, well, it's not really a problem, he said, but it all relates to your trauma. And I said to him, oh, look, I know I'm so crazy, doctor. He said, well, you're not crazy and you never were crazy. And I keep telling you you're not crazy. But the problem is, he said, your trauma activation, he said, means that, you will always have that for the rest of your life. It's not going to go away. And he said, but you're learning to push it aside and say, no, this is my trauma and this is my past history of horrific experiences, managing my life, and I don't need that to manage me anymore. I've evolved past that. I looked at him and said, do you really think I've evolved, doctor? I said, because I've got this terrible craving for this man who I was deeply in love with, who actually only ever was cold and clammy and quite frankly abusive the way he managed things. And I said, and I don't know why. I said, I don't feel evolved at all. I feel like I've fallen down in a heap. So he said to me, no, it's quite normal because the libido is rising and you're feeling good about yourself. And he said, your jewellery, he said, I've been looking at your jewellery, and he said, you're improving and how you're making that, and it's very wonderful and impressive, he said. And I said, I am feeling like I'm getting better at it, because I persist until I feel it's, like I actually can see a progression and improvement. And I also feel a progression and improvement in my spirit. I'm feeling more accomplished and confident and hopeful than I have in decades, I mean, there's days where I feel dreadful because that's my trauma and my complex PTSD, but overall I'm feeling like, I have some kind of hope or goal on the horizon, right, to work towards or to move towards, rather than it just being, a giant vacuous abyss of betrayal and torment and awfulness. So anyway, I discussed it with my doctor, and he discussed with me, he said, your sexuality, Tanya, he said, is terrifying to men. I said, well, why would that be? He said, well, actually, Tanya, you're quite androgynous. And I hadn't really thought about it that way, because I think of myself as powerful and strong, but I think of myself as very feminine. But he said to me, no, you're actually quite androgynous. He said, and when you feel threatened, you exude more of a masculine energy. he said, which a former female friend that I won't mention by name because I'll probably post this on YouTube, but a former female friend that I had that was clearly bisexual in her predilections used to get quite inappropriate with me when she was drunk or under the effects of, other substances. And and I said, yeah, I always wondered about that because she was like, full on heterosexual, but under any excuse under the influence of wine or substances. I said she'd actually get quite, grabby and weird with me, and it used to really freak me out because I'm actually not gay. I said, I'm strong and I'm powerful and I love women, but I don't, I'm definitely not gay. And not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but, this was a platonic female friend that would actually get a little bit out of order, used to I'd have to set firm boundaries with her, and it used to be quite quaint because it was almost like dealing with a female version of Marquis de Sade, slapping her down with the equivalent of a cold teaspoon. It was like full on, man. It was a bit full on. So anyway, so he said to me, yes, he was quite amused by this, my doctor. He said, yes, he said, because she was very attracted, he said, to your masculine energy that you exude. And, she used to like to push the boundaries a bit. And he said, the other thing she was very attracted to, Tanya, he said, was your intellect. I said, what intellect? I said, she had, this person had a master's degree. I said, she was very well educated. He said, yes, she was well educated and that she went to school. And he said, but she was actually, turned on by your intellect. So I thought, I said, what intellect? I said, I had to drop out of university as a teenager because of rape threats. It was awful. He said, yes. He said, but had you remained, he said, you would have succeeded, I'm quite certain of it. He said, because you're extremely bright and you're extremely articulate, which is true, so I was quite pleased that he thinks that I'm bright because I always run around feeling like some kind of universal schmuck with the boot on my neck and another boot, ran right up my jacksie, don't I? Like a bloody walking puppet, pushed and driven at every turn at the mercy of the vicissitudes of sadists and psychopaths and sociopaths and narcopaths and, the former family and the former husband, and many of my former lovers they just weren't in my league, were they? So he reminded me about, when I was quite sexually active, we're talking over 8 years ago, that I would come to my therapy session. I'd say, I took this man home and he was gorgeous. He was just delicious, and the sex was passionate and wild, but he was as dull as dishwater. And this is true. I had this thing for a few years where I was actually bringing home like meatheads, and then I was like, I need to evolve past this, doctor, because I was married to a meathead who was dull, completely dull, and barely could string a sentence together, and got to the stage where we didn't communicate at all. It was awful. And I said, and now I'm bringing home more meatheads. It has to stop. I need a man that's on my level that I can communicate with and go out with and date. So then it was actually quite comical because I said to my doctor, I said, I need to be dated. And I said to him, I've been watching a show called Glamorous, which has a trans person on it and a lot of, gay men. And one of them turns to the other and says, I want to be dated. And my doctor said to me, I totally get that. He said, we do. We want to be dated. We want to be cherished and respected and adored and treated, with kindness and honour and integrity and respect. We're past the point of wanting to be just, stooped and dumped and roll on, roll off and thrown away like garbage. So I told him, I said, there's a man that's been coming to the casino, and I said, I think he kind of is interested in me, but of course I'm not sure. And I said, but he wants to fight me. I said, twice he said that we had this fight. I said, we haven't had a fight at all. It was about his nationality. He happens to be an Irishman. And I said, I merely said to him, oh, you're Irish, because he has an obvious Irish accent. And I said, and he got really upset with me because I merely stated the obvious, that he's Irish. And I said, I don't understand why he wanted to fight me about that. It's like kind of ridiculous. It would be like someone saying to me, oh, you're a New Zealander, and me fighting them about it. It's like, what? Like, I come from originally New Zealand. Like, I've lived in Australia longer than I've lived in New Zealand because I lived here as a child as well. But it's like, if someone says, oh, you're a Kiwi or you're a New Zealander, I go, oh, yes, originally I was. Why would you be embarrassed or ashamed of your nationality? Like, where you're raised, where you're born, it is what it is. So I said to my doctor, I said, this man, I'm a bit interested in him. He seems interesting. I said, but he wants to fight me over stupidity. I said, I'm not interested in fighting someone when I'm trying to get to know them. So my doctor said to me, well, perhaps next time you run into him or you see him there, you might just say to him, I'm kind of interested in you, but I'd like to be dated, and I really don't want to have this intimacy via conflict and fighting over, bantering and fighting, which to the male mind suggests some kind of excitement and stimulation. Doesn't work for me. I'm just here to have a nice time, like dance, have a nice time, go home. If you want to have a fight, go outside, find someone to fight with. He said, just suggest to him that you might actually be interested, but you're open to being dated. And I thought, yes, I'll have to put it right out there. Because the last man that I was in love with, we're talking, many years ago, we're talking 8 years ago, was quite callow and cruel. But he said to me to my face, I'll never date you. Like I was some kind of, crud between his toes. Vile it was. Why? Explain to me why I was in love with that man. I have no idea. But anyway, not to worry. I have learnt, after taking myself off the shelf, wrapping myself up in titanium and cotton wool and, I don't know, swathes of velvet and, cocooning myself for years. I cocooned all through the COVID crisis and I'm still cocooning. I've decided that if I'm going to be with a man sexually, that I want to be dated and treated properly and treated with kindness and honour and integrity and respect. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to want from another human being who I'm going to share my vital organs with, or what's left of them. Like, really, please. And the funny thing is, I had said to this former lover years ago, I said, I am determined that I'm not going to have sex with a man unless he has proven to be truly, deeply in love with me. Then I looked at my psych, because I told him this in our session today. And I said, but here's the kicker, right? I said, I was in a 12-year relationship with my first boyfriend and husband. And I said, and we were having sex, obviously, because I bore him 2 children. I said, but I had no idea how much he actually hated me. I actually thought that, the man did love me, at least in the beginning. I said, so how will I ever know if a man actually has true, ardent, caring, respectful, honouring, romantic, passionate, loving feelings for me? Because I said, my radar got exploded when I was a very young woman, still only in my early, 30s. I said, and I've never been able to get it right. And my doctor just wisely smiled at me and said, well, you're not 25 anymore and you've evolved, so I'm sure you'll be fine, but make sure they date you. Well, I think that's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable thing to expect from someone. But I said to him, look, I said, it was so weird on Friday night. I said, these two young men approached me. One, I barely arrived at the casino. I hadn't even had a chance to take my cardigan off, put my bag down. And he kind of lumbered over to me and said, dance with me. And I said, yes, I'm willing to dance with you, but can you at least let me undress myself a little bit first? He's looking at me and I'm fumbling very slowly with my cardigan because I don't like being jumped on by people I don't know, you know. So anyway, I did take my cardigan off, made a point that I was wanting to not be harried and harassed by some lustful, boisterous lad. But I said to my doctor, I said, I'm still attracting quite young men and it's a bit bloody weird. I said, but having said that, I said, I took my cardigan off, I put my bag down and I danced quite nicely with him. And after about, a couple of minutes, he said to me, oh, you were angry. I said, no, I'm not angry at all. Why would I be angry? I've just arrived. I'm dancing with you. Like, what more do you want kind of thing? Anyway, he lumbered away, that young lad, and then came back again and said, I can't remember what he said. Something about I love your work or something. I think they assume that I'm paid to dance on that little spot because I'm always there. And I just nodded, and then he went away and came back and asked me what my name was. I said, well, my name's Tanya. And, oh, where are you from, Tanya? I said, Australia. And he said to me, he ran away and then he came back. He said, that can't be right that you're from Australia, Tanya. He said, because only New Zealanders pronounce their name as Tanya. So I looked at him and I said to him, well, I can assure you that I am, from Australia. I said, I have lived in Australia longer than I've lived in New Zealand. I said, but I might be from New Zealand originally, and gave him a cheeky grin. And then he kind of went and ran away. So, look, honestly, you can't win with these people. Like, you just can't win. But I wasn't going to get into a fight with him about whether I'm a New Zealander or not, because of course I'm a New Zealander. Like, hello? That's part of my trauma issues, actually, being raised in that shithole of a country by, my family of origin, and the education system was vile. It was absolutely vile. But don't worry, it wasn't all that much better here either. So I think the only time I actually kind of enjoyed my time going to school was the brief time when I was in Germany when I was 8 years old. When I went to school there for 4 months. And even then I was bullied because they didn't believe there was such a thing as New Zealand. And the teacher had to pull down the map of the atlas of the world and point to New Zealand. Said, right down next to Antarctica, that little country there is where Tanya comes from. By the way, in Germany and Europe, Tanya is pronounced Tanya too. It's only in Australia that they go, Tanya. Anyway, never mind. So I was telling my psych about this young man, and I said, and then another young man came bounding over to me, and he also wanted to dance with me, which is fine. I'm there to dance, have a nice time, enjoy life, and be dancing and be wild. Wild as in dancing wildly. And he also said, oh, you're angry. I went, no. I said, what is wrong with you men that you assume that I'm angry when I'm actually having a lovely time dancing? So I was thinking, I said to my doctor, is it my face? Do I look hostile all the time or something? And he said, oh, you probably, when you're feeling like a little bit intimidated because they're running at you, he said, you probably give them your look. And I went, no, they only get the death stare when they're really threatening. I said, I reserve that for only very special circumstances. And I said, because I know it's it's an energetic flow that actually depletes me too, as much as it certainly sets the other person off guard, doesn't it? But I don't do that lightly. So anyway, we were laughing about that a little bit, my psych, because I said to him, I said to Jared, my friend, 2 weeks ago, I said, my doctor keeps pushing my buttons about my look. And I said, and I said, and you're pushing my buttons, doctor. And I said, and it's driving me mad. Because I said, I've always had that particular look reserved for a particular kind of vermin that deserves it. And he was like laughing. And I said, and my friend Jared said, I don't know what he's going on about. He said, you had that look when you were in your 30s. And he said, and it was scary back then. And I was like laughing about it too. So anyway, my psychiatrist informs me that he thinks it's my my fear of, my health depleting that has opened up my sexuality and my libido, and it's all starting to. And he said, and do you know why? I went, why? He said, because you feel safe. He said, you've been cocooned in your house for 3 years. You've had minimal contact with other human beings. You haven't had any major dramas. Little does he know, I've got poles all around this house as like potential weapons, because I did have a couple of occasions recently where I had people be quite threatening in my neighbourhood. So I've got strategic weaponry all around my garden, which I hope I don't have to ever use because, well, it could get ugly, couldn't it? But anyway, I'm thinking, yes, I am feeling safer in recent weeks or months. Things have settled down and I'm feeling, I'm feeling more comfortable. But with my health being the way it is and, deteriorating a little bit, and it took me a while to recover from the dentistry I had a few weeks back, and now the bladders are everywhere. I said to him, I did do a major spiraling, death spiraling down, and I said it was quite frightening. But I said to him, I realised it's actually quite spiritual. And so I said to my doctor, I said, it'll be very interesting to see, I said, what kind of night I have when I go out this weekend dancing. I said, because the vibe was just a little bit not quite right last Friday. I mean, the young fellows that came to dance with me were sweet and boisterous and enthusiastic. But they kept asking me why I was angry, and I was like, I'm not angry. So that kind of unhinged me a bit, this weird vibe where they're just trying to needle you and look for some kind of tweak at you or poke at you, looking for some kind of hostility where there was absolutely none. So we'll see how we go this weekend, because it's like I came home feeling quite drained actually on Friday night or early Saturday morning. And, like I say, I woke up with this supercharged feeling in my body like I need to get back out there and dance again Saturday night, but I knew I was overtired. But instead I put the energy into making a little rabbit ring that I made. It was commissioned by my daughter, so I kind of made it with her in mind. So anyway, I'm wearing it because my daughter and I aren't talking at the moment, and I'm thinking, well, I put so much work into that ring, it took me, a full day and a half to create, so I want to enjoy it a bit before I give it to her. I'm planning on getting another one made. I want to get the model sent away for get someone to cast it with the lost wax so I can compare which turns out better, because the dove casting with the rabbit with the little legs didn't quite work out as well. So that's the plan anyway with that. But by the gods, I worked hard on that little ring Saturday evening and then most of Sunday. So, and then at the same time, I actually wasn't physically all that well, so I was really driving my meat sack like you wouldn't believe, So anyway, but yes, I feel like I've turned a corner in my therapy, because my doctor pointed out, he said, you're never going to be completely over the traumas. And I actually woke up with nightmares this morning, dreaming that I was homeless, and stopped and asked a group of Aboriginal people on the beach if if there was somewhere safe for me to sleep because I was homeless, and if they knew, where in the area would be a safe place. And in the dream this morning, the young man stared right into my eyes and he said, "There's nowhere safe for you. These are dangerous times." And then I stared right back, and then I woke up still kind of freaking out that I wasn't feeling safe in the dream, and that I was frantically in the dream trying to get myself, a safe place to sleep and to set up some sort of camp, right? So, but it's a post-traumatic dream. I often have trauma dreams. So push that aside. Like a typewriter pattern, the old-fashioned typewriter patterns, where you're typing along and then it reached the end of the line and it would go ka-ching, and you would slide the cartridge along, ching, it would go ding, and then you keep typing. Well, that's how I'm pushing aside the traumas. But anyway, I said to my psych, I said, well, it'll be very interesting how I go this weekend. I'm intrigued because I feel like I'm ready to accept love in my life now. That's huge, people. That's huge. I haven't felt that way for years, absolute years. I've pushed it down, pushed it down, pushed it down. So we'll see. I mean, I'll just carry on doing what I always do, dancing wildly to the point of exhaustion, come home. But, I'm hoping that, someone genuine might come along, sometime in the future, hopefully not too distant future, because I'm getting old here, and, it'd be nice to have something lovely to look forward to, a lovely romance with someone kind and noble and decent. So I'm actually looking forward to that for the first time in years. Somebody noble, kind and decent, and hopefully I meet someone of that caliber, and they actually want to date me, and they're not too young because that's just weird, and they're not too old because that's also weird. And, but they're kind and they're respectful, and so we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the gods bring me. But in the meantime, Bobo had a bath today and a brush. He's looking quite handsome. So I sit here with my Bo, living my best life. Isn't it right, Bo? Bobo? Say hello to YouTube, Beauregard. Say hello to YouTube. So, yes. So I'll take my androgynous self. My doctor says I can be very feminine. He said, but you can also be very masculine, very androgynous. And he said, and I know because I study gender. And I'm thinking, that's interesting, because I've never really thought about myself as being androgynous before. I've thought of myself as being a bit twin-spirited, and that sometimes there is an energy in me that is very protective and masculine that, especially when I'm under threat, will just arise and like literally almost like a wolf, it's kind of a fierceness, which I understand is frightening, but, it's maybe it is my spirit guide being a wolf, who knows. But it is a masculine, very powerful presence that I do rein back, because I myself find it a little bit confronting when I present that way. But I hadn't thought about it that I might present as masculine, outside of being in protection mode or defensive mode, in ordinary interactions. But as my psychiatrist pointed out, he said men are terrified of women's sexuality, which they are. It's a primal, ancient, built into the psyche thing. The fear of being subsumed by the female, the classical vagina dentata. Not that I have vaginal dentata down there, but I have an intellect that could snappy any man off right at his ankles if I have to. And as I pointed out to my doctor, I said my sexuality is so powerful that even I suppress it, because it does me no good if I'm attracting inordinately young men or inordinately dangerous, destructive, psychopathic, life-threatening men, or men that are just so cold and clammy and cruel that their idea of a good time is shoving their girlfriends in my face every weekend to let me know, how they think I'm not worthy of them. And at the end of the day, they just made fools of themselves because they were constantly looking for me, weren't they? For years. I mean, it stopped now, it hasn't happened for 2 or 3 years, but, that did go on for quite some years. This I don't want you, but I want you, I don't want you, but I want you bullshit game that he played. So, if he wanted me, he'd be here beside me on the couch with my dog, watching TV, probably grunting, asking me to make him dinner or a cup of tea or whatever. Probably be bored out of my skull, actually. So it's probably a good thing nothing came of it. This is the problem, people. I can't deal with abject, dull intellects or completely boring people. Like, if all they've got to talk about is football or fishing, and I realise these are masculine pursuits, and so to men, most men, football and fishing are like really exciting things to talk about. But, if that's all they've got to talk about, I just sit there like kind of drooling, thinking, why am I even here? I like to talk about spirituality and mysticism and metaphysical subjects and science and technology and philosophy. And I'm not a sportswoman. Sorry, guys, if you're a sportsman, you'll find me dull as dishwater because I don't even know, all the sports stars. I've got no interest, none. I think the last person that I knew that was a famous sportsman was Tiger Woods, because he was a golfer, and, I think there was some scandal around him, and then I've heard of a few of the tennis stars. But honestly, if I met them in real life, I wouldn't know them if I fell over them, I wouldn't, who are you? Same with rock stars, like I'll follow bands, but I don't know the names of people in the bands. Like the last guy I was in love with, the one that was cold and clammy and played sadistic games, shoving women in my face, he would go on about, oh, Robert Plant, who's he? And go, you don't know who Robert Plant is? And he'd get all frickin' offended. Well, how was I supposed to know? I've heard of Led Zeppelin. I even like some of their songs, but I had no idea who the individual band members were. I wasn't following them in the day. I grew up with Chet Atkins and Shirley Bassey and, it gets worse. Who was the other one my parents used to make me dance to on a Sunday morning? They'd throw on the records. I had to dance to all these people. Shirley Bassey I quite like, because Shirley Bassey can fucking sing, all right, but the rest of them, Perry Como, he sings nice, but I mean, please. And Vera Lynn, and who was the other one my mother liked? Elvis Presley. And and I'm a rock chick. I only discovered this late in life, by the way, in my 40s. I like things like, Metallica and, the alternative music. And, of course, I always loved Lou Reed as a young girl. I wasn't allowed to have his records or anything at home. I wasn't allowed my first album till I was 13 years old, which was Fleetwood Mac, and it was bought for me by my half-sister which was a big deal, my first record album. A week later, she pinched it back off me. I never saw it again. And it was Rumours, Fleetwood Mac's Rumours, and I never forgot it. Who buys their sister a birthday present and then steals it back from them? She was just so fucking abusive. Bear in mind, when I was 13, my sister was 15 years older than me. She was a 28-year-old woman working as a lawyer with a husband who worked high up in IT. She was very well heeled, had plenty of money. There was no need for that behaviour, to do that to a baby sister. It was just venal was what it was. But anyway, this guy that I used to be in love with, and to be honest, I still carry a torch for, even though he was a venal little schmuck. He did not like it that I didn't know who Robert Plant was, and got really offended and angry and didn't want to talk to me afterwards. Went stooping everything else that moved to prove some point that he's trying to catch himself in S2D. Not my problem, not my circus, not my monkey. But anyway, and then he wondered why I got off-put by his bad behaviours, because he was just like kissing all the women in the casino in front of me and just acting like a douche. And then, but still running after me on some level. And my psych says it's because of my powerful sexuality, and, you know, men never forget, do they, darling? Well, I've had to suppress it. I've had to bury it deep. But when I open it out, oh, well, let's hope it's not going to be like Pandora's box and creating havoc in the known cosmos, because I really do hope that if I get to that stage where I am sexually, active again with a wonderful man, that he's worthy of me and treats me with kindness and decency. I said that already, didn't I? But anyway, that's where I'm at. I've been in a dark place for the last couple of weeks, and now I'm starting to, as I said to my psychiatrist, I'm starting to blossom and unfurl. And I said, I compared it to the sweet pea. If you've ever seen sweet peas growing, they usually grow because they're climbers. They grow out and they put little tendrils out and they grab onto something, right? And then they push out this little bud and they open up and there's this little flower, and then they have another little tendril over here, and that opens up and has a little flower, and then it climbs up, your trellis or your fencing, and it grows that way. And that's what I feel like I'm just moving, putting out little flowers, blossoming, seeing how that goes. Oh, nothing bad happened with that. Let's move this way, put another little tendril. How is that going? And my solar plexus is on some kind of higher vibration, and I'm like, no solar plexus, no sacral chakra, you've got to behave. There'll be none of that. We're just going to tap that down for a bit longer. I don't know what I'm saving it for, but it better be for something worthwhile. And in the meantime, yes, I'm fully opened in my creativity and enjoying that. And yeah, just opening up to life again and seeing what wondrous gifts flow to me and through me, with harm to none and competition from none, from a most beneficial, benevolent source, meaning God, and, flowing down to me and making my life beautiful with harm to none and competition from none. So it is done. So that's my video. And, yes. My psychiatrist parting shot, because we do have a kind of a telepathic bond that's developed over the years, because he's been my doctor for, 12 years now. I think we're into our 13th year. So we do have this mild form of telepathy where sometimes I pick up on when he's not been well and, you know, when he's had illnesses, and he's picked up on me, which is interesting. I call it the Jungian, or he calls it the Jungian connection. And I had that Jungian connection extremely powerfully with that last lover I mentioned. It was so powerful that it was sometimes alarming and soul consuming, that it would drain me, you know. And so my doctor was so lovely. He said to me, he said, I will know how you're going on Friday night when you go dancing. He said, I will have a sense of it if things are going well. And I thought that was cute, because really, you know, it's a little bit weird, this kind of soul connection that we have, but you know, it's harmless, it's not bad transference, and it was cute, you know. Anyway, I see him every 2 weeks, so I'll let him know how I go in the next 2 weeks. And I'm just hoping that I met someone lovely, and or that I've already met someone lovely who steps up to the mark and reveals pure intentions and authentic intentions and genuine intentions. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I don't want to get my hopes up, because then I'll just get distraught. And by the same token, I don't want to make any more serious soul-destroying, body-destroying, heart-aching, heart-breaking, teeth-shattering mistakes with any more negative, vicious, nasty men. So it's scary. It's scary being me, and it's scary being alive on this planet right now. But as my psych said, I'm not the only patient this week that has said they're willing to open up to all potentials and fully engage with life again. So it must be the zeitgeist of our time at the moment, and you know, that's a positive thing, to literally come up for air and explore love and joy and potentials and creativity and sexuality again is a powerful force of life, l'chaim. And on that note, good night from us. Good night from Beauregard. Say good night to the people, Beauregard. Oh, Beauregard. You're always so grumpy, Beauregard. I love you. I love you. He says, I love you, but I don't like the paparazzi. Okay, good night from us. Be good. Be careful. Be proud of who you are. Honour thy ancestors, the ancient ones, the primordial ones, and live your best life. And if someone's not kind to you, doesn't respect you, doesn't treat you with honour, integrity and basic human decency, tell them to go be awesome somewhere else. Bye for now.